Hi, my name is Brett William Simpson. I am a spontaneous cancer remission survivor. I'm a coach, a facilitator, a trainer, and a speaker in the health and the well-being space. Today's presentation, I'm going to present to you the learnings and the wisdom from those people who have recovered from terminal cancer diagnoses, as well as those people around the world who live the longest out of all of us, and unpack the secrets around psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, the placebo effect, and all of those really fancy words that make me sound incredibly smart. So I hope you really enjoy the presentation today. So my presentation is called Radical Healing Truce. And the reason why I've called it this is because some of the information seems quite radical around healing. And as you can see by the images on your screen, on the left-hand side of the screen is me before cancer. In the middle is the cancer process that I went through. And on the right are, I suppose, me honoring the healing and the well-being pillars that I've learned are scientifically supported. So what I'm going to take you through during the course of this presentation is around health and well-being. There's some sobering statistics that I'm going to just drop, but there's a huge amount of hope. So this is not about fear-mongering, and there's enough of that rubbish around the world at the moment with coronavirus. I'm going to give you some insight about how powerful placebo effect can be and how you can utilize that. I'm going to take you through a case study, and this is essentially probably more so around the credentials of why you should trust me, or why I hope you will be open to trusting me during the course of this presentation because of what I've been through and why I'm doing this work. Then the Iniyagram, which is probably the most powerful tool I've ever come across that has really helped me understand the reason why I feel, act, and think the way that I do in this world, and how I've created my personal reality or my personality, essentially, as the Enneagram helps us understand, and how that can influence our health and well-being. Then I will go through Radical Remission by an amazing doctor named Dr. Kelly Turner. And then I'll also go through Blue Zones, which is essentially a study by National Geographic's Dan Beuttner over the last 15 years. And then lastly, my application of healing principles, which I've labeled under the brand Fierce Compassion. So I am, as I mentioned, a spontaneous remission cancer survivor. I'm a CTI qualified professional coach. I'm an Iniyagram practitioner through Integrative Iniyagram Solutions. For the last 5 years, my CV looks like this. I was the director of patient care at Hummingbird Cancer Center here in Cape Town. I was also the CEO of Cancer Buddies for 2 years. And that is before I got into my own practice, which is under brettwsimpson.com if you're interested in understanding a little bit more about who I am and what I represent and the information that I share. So this screen is essentially around my credibility. And for a lot of you watching this, it's unlikely that you haven't been touched by cancer. In fact, the statistics and the disturbing statistics are around that if you were born in the year 1900, your chances of getting cancer was 1 in 20. If you were born in 1940, your chances of getting cancer was about 1 in 14. If you were born in 1970, your chances of getting cancer were 1 in 10. If you were born in 2020, your chances, if you're an American male right now, are 1 in 2. Now, why is that? The other statistic that is both a little bit disturbing and is hope-filled is that this is very dependent because there's so much false news that's going on around the moment. But in all the authorities that I've been watching, there's been a lot of stats that have gone around, and between 70 and 95% of cancer diagnosis have now been linked to 4 things. And those 4 things are environmental toxins. So this is toxicity in the food that we eat. It's toxicity in the materials that we wear in our clothing. It's toxicity in the air. Toxicity is a big word, as you can see. The second part is how we deal with stress. It's not stress in particular, but it's how we deal with it. We are all living on cortisol at the moment, especially in this COVID-19 situation. And that is extremely dangerous because essentially we're driving ourselves on cortisol and adrenaline and so many other stress hormones. But it's relating to that stress. It's not essentially stress. Stress is essentially quite good for us, but not in living constantly in stress. The next one is nutritional density of our food. So the stats are pretty consistent, and it's pretty reliable that we are actually getting 40% less nutritional density in our food than our grandparents had in theirs. So this is because of farming practices. And if you watch somebody like Zach Bush, MD, he is an amazing thought leader around immunology as well as farming practices and going back to natural farming practices. And then the last one is what I'm going to speak to, and is pretty much what I'm going to cover in this whole presentation, and that's lifestyle choices. And it has a huge bearing on essentially our health, our well-being, and our susceptibility to disease. I'm trying to go through this a little bit too quickly, so let me slow it back down a little bit. So essentially, this is my cancer journey, and this is my credibility. So I was misdiagnosed 4 times. The ultimate culprit was a cancer called squamous carcinoma. So it was on my lip over here, as you can see by the pictures. I thought I was clear after that first operation, and then we found out that it went into my lymphatic system, both on the left and the right side of the hemispheres of my body. I then had a bilateral neck dissection, which basically filleted me from ear to ear, down to the top of my nipples, essentially on my chest, and pulled everything out of my system. Anything that was attached to my lymphatic system, it was my lymph, it was fat, it was muscles, and it was tendons as well. So then I had radium treatment or radiation treatment after that. But the most amazing gift that I was given was the gift of belief by 4 allopathic doctors, 4 amazing doctors who, to this day, I am so grateful they saved my life. Basically, what they did was they told me that I had a 95% chance of making it during my cancer journey itself. So I thought, I got this. I've got this. What I found out 3 years later, accidentally, through one of my amazing doctors, was that I actually was on the other side, not 95% chance of terminal diagnosis, but I was certainly on the other side of 50%. It was unlikely, according to them and their science and their statistics, that I was going to survive. I didn't know this at the time. I had the belief. When I discovered 3 years later that I actually fought worse stats than I was exposed to or that I understood, I went into this amazing, empowering, frightful shift in belief system. That was the most empowering moment of my life, literally, quite literally. I can envisage that moment as if it was yesterday. And that just set me for the last 13 years on this path of research and understanding and applying and looking at psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, the placebo effect, neuroplasticity, and trying to understand how these amazing sciences work and how to apply them to my life. And this is essentially what I'm presenting today. Nothing that I'm presenting I don't apply to my lives. I'm by no means an expert, and I don't think anybody on this planet is. I think we're all learning, we're all growing into new truths around these sort of belief systems. I believe even people like Joe Dispenza who's at the forefront of especially the mental and emotional side of how we can shift our biology, how we can shift our energy, and how we can shift our lives essentially to an abundant state, to a healthy state. I believe that we're all moving in that direction, and but it's through the experience, it's through applying these principles and the integration of these principles that really is the power behind true well-being, around true health. So let's just kick us off with a placebo study. So the reason why I've chosen this study is because it's easily searchable, and you can find the study on the internet, so that it's not me just sitting here going, okay, well, here's this fictitious, unsubstantiated study. You can find this yourself, and you can really take a look into it. And there's one of the people who have done this is Eleanor Langer. She is somebody who I think is absolutely phenomenal. If you Google her and find her TED Talks and a lot of information around her, you'll find some absolutely phenomenal studies that she's done besides this. So it's called Mindset Matters, Exercise, and the Placebo Effect. So what essentially she did with AJ Crum was to get 2 hotel groups with 48 chambermaids and to do a trial with 2 control groups. 2 groups. The one was a control group and the other one was the active group, essentially. And what that means is essentially all 48 of these chambermaids in these 2 hotel groups had to have one thing in common. And that one thing in common was that during the course of their duties in cleaning rooms in their hotels, they were unaware that they were getting more than the 30 minutes of exercise that the Surgeon General of the US recommends is a good exercise for the day. So it's a healthy exercise. So it's like eating your 5 veg and fruit for the day. So essentially, these 48 chambermaids were unaware that during the course of their work, they were getting more than 30 minutes exercise. In fact, they were getting a heck of a lot more. So they split them into 2 groups. The first one, they educated that their work actually exceeded what the Surgeon General recommended as the 30 minutes. So they were getting a lot more than that. The second group, they kept uneducated. So they were the control group. They didn't tell them that anything around the fact that their work equivalated to a massive amount of exercise. After 30 days, the first group lost an average of 2 pounds of body fat. So that's 2 pounds of body fat. The second group, who were not aware or not educated that their work equivalated to a huge amount of exercise, had no change. Now, how is that possible? This is the power of the placebo effect. And this is where people like Joe Dispenza are so powerful, because they take how this works and they break it down into how the mind programs it, to how the mind puts it into the emotions, to then the emotions signaling our genes, to then our genes stimulating the creation of specific hormones. So essentially, once you understand the thread of that journey, you'll understand how the placebo effect works. And the more you expose yourself to that information, the more that it boggles the mind. So essentially, 3 factors have to be included. 1, conditioning of the mind. So essentially, the chambermaids were conditioned to either think that the exercise was a part or wasn't a part. So there was a conditioning there. The expectation was sown within the first group, that they expected now that the exercise they were doing would yield some level of reward, and they had to have meaning in it, so that it was meaningful to do exercise and to have their work equivalent to exercise and be positive in their lives. So all 3 of those conditions were met, and that is why the control group lost 2 pounds of body fat. So this is just one study that is really, we should be teaching this in our medical schools over and above anything else, because the power of our mind to signal our hormone chemistry or pharmacy internally is unparalleled and unbelievable. And the more that we start to believe it, the more that we apply it, the more that we can start to shift our health mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically. Now, we get to the Iniyagram. This is, as I mentioned, my favorite tool. The Iniyagram is essentially an ancient Greek, the word is Greek, but it sits within Christianity, Sufism, Judaism, ancient maths, ancient science. It's one of those tools that no one really has a clear understanding of exactly who created it, where its origins actually come from. Origins actually come from. But what essentially it does is it helps us understand how we've created our thinking, feeling, and action during our lifetime. And when we get into the Enneagram, and when you understand, or let me keep this subjective, when I understand that I'm a 9 and I'm an adaptive peacemaker, I've started to understand that my superpower is mediation. My superpower is understanding other people's perspectives and being able to mediate between those perspectives. And it also has helped me take ownership of that. So now I sit there and go, I'm good at this. You know, I know what I've got the skill. I've been developing it unconsciously for 44 years up until this point. The other thing, and this is the most powerful thing I believe, and especially with where we are in the world, the importance of this is incredible. kindness to our weakness, or kindness to our shadow, or kindness to that part of ourselves that is our growth area. So the 9 essentially, so this is where I'm challenged. So my shadow, or my weakness, essentially is conflict. So I avoid conflicts like the plague, essentially. Maybe a bad example, or maybe a bad metaphor. Sorry for that, with COVID-19 going around. But essentially, I'm not very good, or I haven't been very good at conflict up until this point. So I go to flight, fright, or freeze with this. So now, knowing this, I can be more compassionate when I go into that space, and I can be calmer to go, okay, well, I'm just not used to dealing with this. I'm just not comfortable. But now what I do to stretch that, to grow, to use this to grow, I essentially sit there and go, okay, well, if I need to get into a challenging conversation, how do I use the superpower of my type, which is mediation and other people's perspective, to help myself in conflict or in disagreement? And I use that superpower to help me in my shadow, and I'm more compassionate. And this, I believe, is the most important thing that we can learn in this day and age. And I believe with COVID-19 right now, compassion, 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 and the Iniyagram gives us that avenue into compassion for ourselves. Once we get that compassion for ourselves, we can do it for other people. And if there's anything that I wish you take away from this presentation, it's that. Anyway, let me carry on. So Iniyagram is an amazing guide to life. I use integrative Iniyagram solutions. They're amazing. I'm qualified through them. They've got an adaptive questionnaire that really drills down into all the nuances, because even me as a 9 and somebody else as a 9, we're quite different. And their offering really helps us, or helps me as a coach, understand the differences between those and support people to understand it for themselves, so they can bring more compassion and they can bring more confidence and ownership into their strengths. Okay. So Radical Remission is the name of a book by a woman named Kelly Turner, or doctor named Kelly Turner, sorry. So her first book is Radical Remission. Her second book is called Radical Hope, which has just come out now. She's got a docu-series which came out a couple of months ago, and she's got a documentary coming out I think at the back end of this year. And what is phenomenal about her work, and she's a game changer in the health space. So if you haven't heard of her, please take a look. She's a phenomenal human being. So she was a coach like myself, but she started coming across spontaneous remission cases that were in PubMed. Now, PubMed is essentially a scientific portal for medical documentation and studies. And she started interviewing people who had these spontaneous remissions from cancer, and she started finding a pattern. So she got more funding, and she went around the world for a year, and I think it was a year and a half. And she has interviewed over 1,500 people, their families and practitioners, and tried to understand what they did in order to buck the statistics. So what I mean by buck the statistics, I'm struggling with the word today, statistics, was that these people who should have died from specific cancers, be it that they did an integrative approach, a traditional approach, but what they did, all of these people, was they took their health into their own hands too, and they started taking responsibility in 9 different ways, now actually 10. So she's added 10th to it. So essentially what she did is she started to find these consistent themes started to pop up. And they became 9 solid ones for her, because every single person that she interviewed had them all loosely. Some focused on 2 or 3, and others focused on another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So essentially not everyone, this is not a one size fits all, but this is essentially each one of these pillars or themes was present in all of these spontaneous remissions. Some of them were very strong on certain ones though. So I'm just going to go through them quite quickly, but her work is absolutely phenomenal. It really should be taught in schools. It is really, for me, the foundation of health and well-being. And her book is amazing because it basically describes the pillar, then it gives you science from other people and research from other people supporting that pillar. Then it gives you an understanding of what that actually looks like experientially. So that's essentially people who, that was their stories. And then she gives you tools that they use, so how they did it, and how they applied those principles. So it's a It's really it's just this amazing guide to basically helping you understand how to integrate these pillars into your lives. So it's a radical change in diet. So this is obviously more to leaning towards grains and fruits and veg and natural plants. I mean, there's so much on the internet these days around this that I don't think I need to go into much. Taking control. This is around decisiveness. This is the concern around empaths like myself who, kind of are fence sitters and not making decisions around treatment that are just cool. Let's make those. So this is really around making small decisions and building upon those. Following your intuition. There's a huge amount around intuition. I'm going to try not to convince you right now about how powerful this is. I mean, just the fact that we've got 1 million neurons in our stomach lining says that we've actually got brain cells in our stomach lining. So, and our microbiome is just, scientists are only and immune specialists have been banging on about this for so long now that finally the rest of the world is waking up to how powerful our microbiome is and how powerful our intelligence that sits in, firstly, our gut, secondly, our heart, and thirdly, our brain, and how we can actually use those to actually move towards health. Herbs and supplements. So, I mean, I think this is fairly obvious that, cancer patients or people with disease are deficient in certain amino acids and supplements that can really kind of boost or kind of bring back up, like vitamin D and zinc and things like that, and potassium. But this is very subjective. That's a very controversial one actually as well. Suppressed emotions. So this is about releasing suppressed emotions. It's about the old trauma, about being able to kind of, instead of, how do I say this? Instead of denying the pain that we've gone through, instead of denying negative emotions, instead of denying anger, it's allowing those emotions through. It's learning from those emotions, taking cues from those, allowing us to be truthfully honest around that trauma and giving it space so that it can exhaust itself and feeling into it. So there's this mantra in the healing and wellness space that is, you have to feel it to heal it. So essentially, this is what this pillar is about. Then positive emotions. Oxytocin is the most powerful natural hormone/drug that we produce ourselves through our pituitary gland, and serotonin through our gut as well as our brain. That it's so easy for us to be able to kind of understand how important it is to chase joy. Joy is a natural thing that we can schedule in our diary, and because of the obligations of the world, we don't prioritize this. Really, really important. Social connections, probably the most powerful out of all of them, sits at 7. We are a social species. The interconnectedness of our human relationships is diabolical, and the studies behind this are phenomenal. I mean, if you look into PubMed around how community support helps people going through cancer or improves well-being and wellness, it's the science, the biology is evident. It's there. Spirituality. This is not religion. This is a spiritual practice under radical remission. It's around a connection to ourselves. To my understanding and to my interpretation, it's mindfulness. Then a reason to live. So this is around purpose, and this is around anchoring to something that gives us meaning in the life. So Viktor Frankl, in his book A Man's Search for Meaning, portrays his journey through Auschwitz, which is a concentration camp, and his journey through that, and how he understands, or how it revealed to him as a psychotherapist, how important meaning and a purpose was for those people who survived Auschwitz, to the people who passed away, who lost that hope, and how hope can actually be this unbelievable anchor that moves us towards purpose, that actually has a chemical influence on our hormones and our genetic expression. So very, very powerful. Then we look at blue zones. Now, blue zones is amazing. It's done. This is a study done by Dan Beuttner, funded by National Geographic, essentially to find areas in the world where people are living the longest. So he went around the world, and I think it was $500,000, and he went around the world for, I think it was a year, and he found 5 areas in the world essentially that have the longest living people, and it's not necessarily they're living in a wheelchair or on a bed. These people are active. They're literally living to over 100 and then passing away quickly and peacefully, mostly in their sleep. So this Blue Zones really kind of is a 15-year study that Dan Beuttner has gone through to understand, why do these people live longer than most people in the world? Like, what are the ingredients that are present for them? Funnily enough, it's another 9 principles. It's this thing of 9, and you saw it in the Iniyagram, which I find interesting, and you saw it in radical remission, which is really interesting as well. And we found it here again. So I'll go through his. And again, I really encourage you to get the book. This is a phenomenal book. It really gives such obvious principles. I mean, when you go through them, they make sense. You know, they just intuitively, you know when you feel a truth in your body, like you feel it in your cells. Essentially, these make absolute sense to me, at least subjectively. So let me go through them quite quickly, because otherwise I'm going to get onto a monologue. As you can see, I'm susceptible to natural movement. This is not around going to the gym. This is not around going to a yoga class. This is walking to the store. It's bicycling to see a friend. It's chopping up your vegetables, even down to that. It's mowing the lawn. It's we've lived in a society that has convenienced every single aspect, which takes away burn of calories, of exercise, of stretch, of movement. So this is around that. Purpose, again, exactly the same as radical remission. Radical remission, excuse me. When I get excited, I speak over myself, believe it or not. Then downshift. This is really around stress. So this is around managing stress. It's around just going like, cool, today I'm going to chill. It's resting and relaxing, because we need that space in order to regenerate. So I was a big time runner, doing ultra marathons I've done Ironman and comrades and things like that. And what I realized through all that training was that I needed to take 2 days off for myself in order for that exercise that I'd done in the 5 days prior to that to be able to integrate it to my system. And this is what a lot of people don't honor in the athletics world, is that your resting, that's where the power happens. That's where the integration happens. The next is plant slant. It's again the same as radical remission, fairly obvious one there as well. The 80% rule. So the 80% rule is quite an interesting one around. It's about stopping eating when you're 80% full, because your body, your stomach communicating to your head takes a little bit of a while. So once you hit 80%, your body's basically 100% full in any case. It's just that delay of communication that you actually are full. So that's eating to a degree where, again, I'm saying 80% a lot here, 80% full. Then wine at 5 p.m. Now, this is really encouraging for a lot of people that I've done. I always get a snigger around this, because red wine, a good quality red wine, it's better to have that. I've given up alcohol myself because I don't have a good relationship with it. But for those people who enjoy a glass of wine, you're actually healthier than me, because it has antioxidants. There's so many other good quality or good properties in a good glass of red wine that are actually healthier for you than not actually having it. But this is obviously not abusing it. This is obviously not using it as a crutch. Then we get into the right tribe. So this is about that analogy that you are the sum of the 5 people that surround you. And this is exceptionally powerful. If you are in a group of people who play video games, you're probably going to play video games. If you are in a group of people who love yoga, you're probably going to end up doing yoga. So this is how you can actually influence your behavior by who you surround yourselves with, because their influence is going to influence you subconsciously. I mean, the stats are that 95% of our life is controlled by our subconscious mind. So what we place in our conscious world influences our subconscious way of showing up in the world, feeling, thinking, acting, spirituality, and our behavior. So this is very, very powerful. Community, this is community-based faith. In Dan Beuttner's description of it, it's very, very powerful, incredibly powerful, because, and again, it connects with number 7 of radical remission, which is community, community, community. So this is around being a part of a tribe, essentially. and I know I've used tribe in both, but this is around a faith-based tribe. So it's around, like for me, I'm not a Christian or I'm not religious per se, but I do love being around people who do similar things to me. Like I've gone a number of meditation courses, and being around people like that, it's like that sense of community supports me in anchoring healthy eating, meditation, all of those things that are healthier for us. And then loved ones first. This is around family specifically. So a lot of people, I get the arguments like, Brett, I understand community is so important, but then, you can't pick your family. It's just like, yes, but you can reframe your family. I've gone through a process, I think, with my father as well as with my mother, both with them and on my own, around taking ownership of those parts of them that I've struggled with, or that I've really appreciative of and I want to build. And investing more time into them has become really, really important to me. So I'm constantly wanting to improve the relationship I have with my immediate family and also with my extended family, because I've got a close extended family. And this is essentially that one. It's around those people who've been there your whole life. How do you improve? How do you recreate? How do you infuse more love in those connections? And this is what that pillar is really about. Right. So I've been a bit cheeky here because I've got a program called Fierce Compassion 21-Day Experience. So my pillars, so taking radical remission, taking blue zones, and taking everything that I've understood experientially myself to move towards a more fulfilling life, a more meaningful life, a healthier life, for myself over the last 13 years, and greatly so for the last 3 years, are these principles. And I've put them under the umbrella of fierce compassion, because fierce compassion for me is essentially the ultimate framework for well-being and health. Compassion, being kinder to ourselves, whether it's eating, whether it's being around people who are nice, who are kind, who give you good energy, or if it's challenging ourselves with people who might be challenging so that we can actually stand on our own 2 feet and put our self-worth toe to toe with somebody else. If it's being kind to ourselves when we've been working really, really hard and we just need to take a day off and just chill, or it's just allowing a sad day. This was one of the hardest things that I've learned, is just having a day where I'm just like, I'm feeling horrible, I'm feeling miserable, and I'm a South African boy and we struggle to cry, but having a good like snort and trana or tears, for those of you who are not South African, and just sitting there and just allowing whatever needs to be allowed in. Very, very hard thing. So essentially, all of this speaks to, for me, is about compassion and about being fiercely loyal to ourselves around honoring that before we honor somebody else's needs. Really, really important. So I'm going to repeat that again. Being compassionate firstly with ourselves. This is the most important thing. How do we show compassion? How do we feel compassion? And how do we act compassionately towards ourselves is the most important thing. So this is why fierce compassion for me is the brand that encompasses all of these pillars as well. And I've taken basically those pillars and what I've experienced and put them into this. So grace and gratitude. Gratitude, the amount of science behind this is we literally become physically healthier by doing an anchored gratitude practice every single day. It is astounding. If you go to positivepsychology.com, hundreds of studies, literally hundreds, and with the best scientists in the world, it is mind-blowing to understand how powerful gratitude is as a practice. And I believe you have to have grace in order to have gratitude, because it is such a movement away from what our subconscious mind is forcing us to do, is to just be so grateful, to go like, I've only got this, but my word, am I grateful for it. So that's the first one for me. The next one is relating to food. It is not necessarily food. For me, in a coach, I deal with the mental and emotional side of things. How I relate to food and how my clients relate to food is everything, because you cannot change your behavior if you don't look at the why behind it. So essentially what I deal with is sitting there going like, why do I have the comfort of lasagna? Why are wine gums to me such a thing for me? Why did I have a bad relationship with alcohol? Why do I look at fruit and veg in the way that I do? So it's understanding what the relationship is behind the food that is really the important thing, because once that awareness happens there, things start to shift. It's amazing. I found that awareness is the shifter for me. It's not necessarily doing the change. It's having flooding the awareness into, maybe it's not the food. Maybe it's the why behind the food. Maybe it's because my mother is the epitome of like love and compassion, and her recipe is lasagna, and that's why I love lasagna. It's a light bulb moment for me. It was a big light bulb for me. So it's becoming aware of the why behind the food. Then it's movement. Movement for me is around, and I've taken on more walking to the store. And obviously with COVID-19, it's actually more convenient to be able to do things like that. Like I've got an amazing neighborhood and I'm able to walk to the store. It's actually mowing the lawn myself as opposed to asking somebody else or paying somebody else to do it. It's chopping up the vegetables as opposed to going to the supermarket and getting pre-packed. It's around taking the stairs as opposed to the elevator. It's all of those lots of little tiny things that I've started to become conscious when I'm like, oh, okay, I can take the elevator or I can do the stairs. Let me do the stairs. It's those sorts of things. But then it's also movement for me. Like if I'm going to exercise, it must be joy. I love kite surfing. I love surfing. I love running. So those things, they're a part of my life now. So it's important for me to honor those things because I get so much joy from them and I get a workout at the same time. Rest and relaxation in our world that is focused on outcome of results of this whole, excuse my language, but corporate bullshit that we've been sold for so long. It is so hard to give ourselves the permission to just take a day and just go, today I'm going to read a book. And that's it. That's as constructive as I'm going to be. So it's allowing ourselves, and the Italians have an artistry around this. I think it's dolce de niente. I'm probably wrong, but it's somewhere along those lines, and it's around the art of doing nothing. And I was in Italy quite a number of years ago, and it was amazing to watch people just like they seem to be a population that have a really powerful ability to do this. They just relax and chillax, and it is so important. In fact, in the Blue Zone work, this pillar is very powerful because I think it's Sardinia in Italy. Shepherds, believe it or not, there's still shepherds in the world. And these people are the healthiest in their communities. Why? Because part of their job is to just chillax and watch their sheep and their herd. Then decisiveness. This is really, really powerful and it's very underrated. And it's when we become overwhelmed, decisions become really challenging. And different personality types deal with this very differently. So the stronger personality types make decisions and keep on going like that at the pace that I can't even make the words come out of my mouth. But the empaths like myself struggle with these decisions because we're wanting to make sure everybody else is okay. So essentially, this is about wherever you are on that scale, but making small decisions, small tiny decisions, but making them with awareness consistently. Again and again and again, so that the bigger decisions start to take care of themselves. Like for me, making the decision to what surgery to take with this one, I could have had another one, and it was probably one of the worst weeks of my life in making that decision around what cancer treatment I take and how aggressive that was going to be. So for me, that decision was really, really hard, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm so overwhelmed by the consequences of a decision. So now I make conscious little decisions. What am I going to have for a meal snack? What am I going to eat tonight? Am I going to walk to the store? Am I going to drive to the store? Those little things make a massive influence for me. Then intuition. Again, I've spoken that a little earlier, living in purpose. For me, it's living in purpose. So I find my purpose. This is my purpose, doing this work. It's sharing this information. I think when people understand the power of this content and this information and how it affects our immune systems and our bodies and our spiritual well-being and our mental well-being and our emotional maturity, we will choose differently. So it's my purpose to do this. And the more that I've locked into this purpose, the more that everything else in my life has been affected amazingly. It's been phenomenal what's happening when I've honored this as my life purpose work. So that's essentially what I'm speaking to. Allowing emotions. This is allowing the tough days. It's going cool. COVID-19 is here. I've got to feel grief. I've got to feel it's ending. This world that was is gone. It'll never be the same world again. Never. So it's allowing myself to mourn that. It was allowing myself to mourn the life before my cancer. And this happens not necessarily just in death, but in subconscious death, in a divorce, in a relationship ending, in losing of a loved one in life, losing of a job, getting fired. It's allowing those emotions through. That's so powerful and so important. I mean, when we cry, we have stress hormones come out in our tears, which means our cells actually get rid of cortisol and get rid of all of those stress hormones through our tears. Tears should be a part of therapy, should be a part of allowing ourselves to let go. Really, really powerful. And then chasing joy. Joy it's free. It's a mind state. If we've got a dog, a cat, like I've got a cat, and I've got access to a cat on the property, and Grace, this little beautiful cat, it softens me. And I know when I'm stroking her, she's purring, but inside, so am I. And what that does for my immune system is tangible. It's real. It's valid. And then the last one, and probably the most powerful, that kind of sits around everything, is mindfulness. Meditation. I can feel when I miss a meditation. And the meditations are hardly ever comfortable for me. And I've been doing them for a couple of years now, very consistently. And it's not convenient. It's never convenient, and it's not easy. So essentially, this is a very powerful part of just having almost a separation from thinking, a separation from toxic thinking, a separation from habitual behavior. That separation starts to happen with mindfulness. And what that tends to do, I find, is it tends to do that. You can see my body language. You can see the calmness that's already come over me. And you can probably feel that energy come through, even watching this video, on me connecting to a more mindfulness practice. I've slowed down my talking. I've slowed down my enthusiasm, but it's calmer. My head is clearer. It's tapping into that. And that is, for me, these 9 for me are power. But mindfulness is a critical component. So thank you very much for watching my presentation. I really appreciate it. I really hope that you've taken away something that you can be compassionate about yourself with, and that you have become aware of areas in your life that unknowingly you're starting to move towards wellness and health and a greater well-being and fulfillment in life. And I really hope that you take fierce compassion to heart. And if you're interested in following me, please just take a look at Brett W. Simpson is my Facebook page, and brettwsimpson.com is my URL. Have yourself an amazing day, and I wish you compassion and kindness to yourself. And a lot of care in these challenging times. Thank you.